Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk, back another video today, and today the Houston Texans are waiving running back Jawhar Jordan, rookie running back, who was drafted 205th overall. It was in the 6th round by the Houston Texans last year out of Louisville. Looked really good in Louisville. With Louisville last season in college football. Had a great season, and was a big part of that offense with Louisville, and they were a top 25 team. They, I think, finished a top 15 team, if I'm correct. And they were great. He was really good. He gets drafted to the Texans. I think there were a lot of high hopes for him to make the 53-man roster going into training camp. But there were guys who really stepped up for this Houston Texans team at the running back position. Obviously, you got the guys that are supposed to make the roster. You have Joe Mixon, you have Duran Gabalaway, you have Dameon Pierce. I know he didn't do good in preseason, but according to all sources and what everybody saw in training camp, he looked good in training camp. It did look in preseason. So those are your three guys that were already supposed to make the roster at running back, out of potentially 5 running backs that make the roster. But then you have the guys that step up and really make a name for themselves and do a good job at running back. I'm talking about guys like Cam Akers, J.J. Taylor, also British Brooks. Those 3 guys right there. I don't think to start off camp or to start off preseason, either 3 of those guys. I think Cam Akers had a shot to make the roster, but I think J.J. Taylor and British Brooks going into the preseason had to have some big performances to make this roster, and they did. Now, Cam Akers was good as well, but I feel like for Cam Akers, he just needed to play really solid and do some good things and keep up the pace that those other guys were going at, and he'd make the roster. Cam Akers was I'll tell everybody this right now. Cam Akers, out of everybody that played at the running back position, Joe Mixon did not play. Keep in mind, Joe Mixon did not play in the preseason. This is including Dameon Pierce. The guys that stepped up, the guys that were good, Jawhar Jordan, who was good, he didn't make the roster. The guys that did make the roster, who played really good, British Brooks, and also having J.J. Taylor making the roster, and including Dameon Pierce. Cam Akers was the best running back in preseason in the 4 games. He was fantastic for the Houston Texans. He did some great things. And honestly, so I thought that he had a 50-50 chance. I would say a 50-50 chance to make the 53-man roster going into preseason and training camp. I think after every game for the Houston Texans, that just went up and went up. Now, with J.J. Taylor and British Brooks, they had to fight way more, and they got those spots, so credit to them. Now, the important thing to add about Jawhar Jordan, he had 21 carries for 55 rushing yards in the preseason, but he was more effective on the receiving end. Did almost more damage there. 5 receptions for 49 receiving yards. I mean, he did have more rushing yards than receiving yards, but it was only by 6. He touched the ball 21 times, but he was effective on the receiving end. I think that plays a big role into things, if you ask me. Guys like British Brooks and J.J. Taylor were solid on the receiving end, but they did a lot of damage on the rushing end. Showed a lot of good runs. Jawhar Jordan had a couple good runs, but he was more effective on the receiving end. And that's not. I think that's not a. Look, I don't think that's a huge reason why he didn't make the roster. I think the bigger reason why he didn't make the roster is because I think British Brooks and J.J. Taylor played better than him and did great things. Now, here's another big important news update for Jawhar Jordan is that he is injured. He injured his oblique in the final preseason game against the Rams, where he had 4 carries for 12 rushing yards. And if he clears waivers, he will be back on the Houston Texans roster on injured reserve. So he will stay on the Houston Texans roster if he clears waivers. If no one picks him up, which I honestly don't think anyone will pick him up. It's not because he's a bad football player. even though he did pretty solid in preseason, I think no one will pick him up just because of the fact that he's currently injured. So, but maybe someone shocks me. I don't know. But if that happens, he'll be back on the Texans, and maybe you could see him, on this roster, maybe in uniform for the Houston Texans, if healthy. I don't know. That would be interesting because there are so many other running backs on this roster right now. There are 6 running backs on this roster. You got Joe Mixon, you have Cam Akers, you have Damian Pierce, you have J.J. Taylor, you have Durango Ballaway, you have British Rook. So I don't know if there's room for another one. But if someone in the running back room were to get injured and Jawhar Jordan is healthy, you would think that they pick him up. So, or they bring him, they bring him back to the 53-man roster. So, we'll see what happens with Jawhar Jordan. Let me know your thoughts on the Texans waiving him, but he is injured. Keep in mind. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and peace out. Go Texans.